Which states saw housing finance surge over 40%? Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee and let's have a look at the State and Territory Economic Performance Report, or State of the States, from Comsec, which was just released because, well, Tasmania is at number 1. I'm surprised? For those of you that don't know, Tasmania is this little state down here. It is a beautiful state, but it's also a very cold state. That's where all the Antarctic expeditions from Australia get sent out, and I'm sure they also have exhibitions as well. So it's a very cold state. It's somewhat remote. There was a cryptocurrency scam where they had their head office set up in Launceston. Now, see where I just put that little dot there? That's pretty much where Lonnie is, right in the middle of the most remote state in Australia. And that's definitely not a sign that it's a dodgy scam, is it? Set up by someone in Lonnie that's being used to give legitimacy to it. But once again, off topic. So Tasmania is sitting at number 1. Then number 2, you have the ACT. 3, you've got Victoria. Joint 4th is New South Wales and SA. Then 6th, joint 6th, or equals 6th, is WA and Queensland, and then the NT, the Northern Territory. Now, I thought we'd go through each of these statistics that they're pulling up here, because what Comsec does, and this is Tasmania here, they've got all these categories, and they compare how that state is performing in these categories to the decade average. Now, one thing I want to draw to your attention before we even look at these figures here from Tasmania, and I'll just bring up this chart here. This is what we were looking at yesterday. The percentage of people on welfare, of the percentage of the workforce on welfare. You can see the job seeker and youth allowance rate. And Tasmania is 12%, everyone. And this is our number 1 state. It's equal to Queensland and just a touch below the Northern Territory. I think is that a good sign? I don't think it is. You know, because they're just focusing on this thing. They're just looking at, you know, unemployment, which is an important indicator, a bad indicator indeed. But the percentage of workforce on welfare should be a consideration here as well, shouldn't it? It's not considered. I wonder why. So, dwelling commencements, 698 dwellings, so it's up 9.5%. So that's some economic activity there. We're seeing some uptake of the home builder in Tasmania, although not as high as some of the other states. Victoria is doing surprisingly well. Unemployment is at 7.6%. Now the national average is sitting at 6.9%. And remember, the general rule of thumb to get the Roy Morgan figures, roughly double it. Roughly double it. But that's, for Tassies, for the Tasmanians, it's 17.9% above the decade average. And I'm just going to have a stein of coffee. I wish, since we're doing a Tasmanian episode, I wish it was some bows. I actually worked for a firm that was based in Launceston, up here in their Queensland office. So I've travelled down there a couple of times. And I went to Tasmania for the States of Mind student conference. In my university days, we travelled from Launceston to Hobart, and it was wonderful. I really loved it. It was great going down there. Very cold, though. And, you know, coming from most of my life in Queensland, I'd never set lit a fire in a fireplace. We don't really, they're not that common up here anymore. Population growth, so it's at 1.12%. So it's a 89.1% increase on the decade average, which was helping Tasmania. I wonder if more people will move to Tasmania for more affordable housing, although their property's gone up too, as well. It's not as attractive as it once was. And, you know, understanding is certain Tasmania is for migrants coming over, you get a regional advantage if you settle in Tasmania. But we've looked at articles in the past where they've settled in Tasmania, migrants coming over, and there was no work, no opportunities for them. So economic growth, here's the big one. It's up 19.9% on the decade average. Wow. 39,691 million. So that's, there you go. Go Tasmania. Equipment investment, it's at 217 million, up 15.2%. Housing finance is 310 million, up 75.2%. Retail spending is also up 11.4% at 1,634 million. And construction work is up 6.3% on the decade average at 724 million. So here Tasmania remains in top spot on economic performance rankings. Tasmania leads on 5 of the 8 economic indicators. So they're in the lead on 5 of these indicators. And then number 2, the second one on the list, is the Australian Capital Territory, the home of our bureaucratic heart, shall we say, of our nation. So dwelling commencements here, they're at 1,154. So it's down 5.1% on the decade average. So they're not leading the decade average. Unemployment is at 3.8%. Compare that to Tassie at 7.6%. Look at that. Only 3.8%. It is the ACT, everyone. And it's lower than the decade average. So one thing we saw in the property data room, I'll bring that up actually, the Property Council data room. And the example I give is just in the commercial property vacancy rates. We'll jump over here because I think it's quite stark to see just how the recession manifests in this chart here. So we can have a look here. There you go. This is the recession Australia had to have. And for those of you that aren't aware, the reason I called it the recession Australia had to have, it's because what our treasurer said at the time, and it is now part of our culture. So you can see here, there's the recession started about then, and boom, 20% on a national level. Sydney, there you go. There's that recession. Melbourne, there's that recession. Brisbane, a little bit of, not as dramatic. Let's go down to the ACT, Canberra. Nothing. Maybe a bit delayed. There you have it. So being a civil servant in Canberra, maybe that's what we all need to look at, everyone. Population growth is down 41% versus the decade average. So they're not doing too well there. Economic growth is plus 20%. Equipment investment is plus 10%. Housing finance is up 67.3% on the decade average. Retail spending is up 8.9%, and construction work is up 5.3%. But look at that fall in population growth, everyone. Look at that dramatic fall there. And then at third spot, we have Victoria. Good old Victoria. And even with the strict lockdowns, the strict restrictions, they're still in third spot. It just shows you just the scale of the economy there. Look at the number of dwelling commencements this quarter in Victoria, 14,978. It's down, but still, just compare that. So the thing is, are these weighed for the size of the economy? Sure, Tasmania is number one in its performance to its own historical average, but compared to Victoria, it's nothing. It's the scale of it just isn't there, just in dwelling commencements. 600, 700 compared to 14,000, nearly 15,000. Unemployment is at 6.9%, and that's 18.2% above the decade average. Population growth, and here's the big one, it's at 1.77, so it's falling. And here's the thing, as Australia is going to, migration is going to decrease. International students are going to decrease. Tourists are going to decrease. And I know tourists aren't population growth, but for a period of time they are, and people come over here and they say, well, I want to stay. We're going to be weaned off this. Migration is more than 50% of our population growth. And that's going to manifest in the value of everyone's favorite investment, property. It'll have to, won't it? Maybe that's the trick. They'll just turn the tap on again. They'll try and entice more people over here. You see from the Property Council, they're advocating for that government needs to entice more people over here. Which, my father, he migrated over here. He came over here with qualifications and experience and managed to get a job really quick. Really quick. Now, I have met people who've come over to Australia who've been enticed to study over here, to spend lots of money over here, to do expensive graduate education over here, and there's no work for those degree qualifications here in Australia. other than teaching people to get those qualifications in a lot of instances. And it comes back to our economic complexity. And I'll bring up my favorite website, everyone. Let's bring up the Harvard Atlas for a change. We'll mix it up first. And you can see just on a global scale, the complexity of Australia's economy. We're 87th in the world with the Harvard Atlas ECI ranking. The OEC, the Observatory of Economic Complexity, they are a little nicer with regard to us. But there we're only ranked, what are we? 73rd in the world. Go Australia. So that's something to consider. I know I harp on about it a lot, but it feeds through to all these other things. You've got these groups advocating to bring people over just to prop up property. Is that ethical when there's no opportunity for them to work? Or you get people coming over with university degrees and there's nowhere for them to use that degree. In my profession, in architecture, there's such a clamp down on these foreign architects coming over here. Just the process to get registered here, it can be quite onerous. And frankly, I think it's a little silly, but that's the way it is. So economic growth in Victoria is still up 23.3%, 23.2% on the decade average. Equipment investment is down 12%. Housing finance is up 41.9%. Wow. Well, there we go. I mean, you can see this right here in this chart, everyone. Look at property prices. Which line's Melbourne? That blue one. Look at that. There you go. This is that is the manifestation of the candle-on effect. Property prices going up here. Finance is up 41.9% on the decade average. And then I'll bring up this quote, everyone, just in case you're not familiar with it. The candle-on effect refers to the change in relative prices resulting from a change in money supply. We're seeing that right here, an increase in housing finance, 40% more than the average. That's money supply. Money's created, essentially, in these mortgages. The change in relative prices occurs because the change in money supply has a specific injection point. There we go, yeah, injection point. And therefore a specific flow path through the economy. So that means that's why these houses are getting more expensive, because that's the injection point right there, and we can see it. It's not an equipment investment, is it? No, it's below that. Retail spending? Oh, not really. It's only 5.9%. Maybe construction work? Well, that's tied to housing finance and other finance. There you go. So there's Victoria. Victoria is now third on the overall economic performance rankings. Victoria still ranks first on 2 of the 8 indicators. But let's bring up this other chart with regards to the percentage of the workforce on welfare. Let me just bring this up. I've got to pre-program all these things. And we can see here Victoria is sitting at 10% of their workforce. And that's the people aged 15 to 64 on welfare. I'd hate to see this if we added JobKeeper to it. I mean, that really should be the measure there, everyone. The percentage of people on welfare as a way of, well, measuring the unemployment. And equal fourth with South Australia is New South Wales. So here dwelling commencements are down 9.8%, but it's still quite high at 12,178. Unemployment is at 7.2%. That's up 37.8%. I can't say anyone would be particularly surprised with that figure. We'll jump and have a look at the welfare percentage. New South Wales, it's at 9%. So it's doing better than Victoria, better than Tasmania, with regards to the proportion of their workforce that's on welfare. So good going, New South Wales. The population growth is down 20%. Again, another state, particularly with a whole lot of people going to Sydney, where they migrate to. And that fuels the property sector, property prices, everyone. Let me bring up this chart showing foreign investment in housing. There's a lot of foreigners investing in properties, investing in apartments. I just know from my own anecdotal evidence, entire development projects completely dependent on foreign finance. And they sell it to foreigners as investors. So economic growth is up 17.4%. Equipment investment is down 9.4%. And again, housing finance, 43.1% versus the last decade. Retail spending is up 5.4 and construction work up 9.2. New South Wales is in joint 4th position on the overall economic performance rankings. New South Wales is ranked 2nd on construction work. Then we have, in joint 4th place, South Australia. And notice how we've had a huge dip again in the number of dwelling commencements. We were looking at over 12,000 here, over 14, nearly 15,000. So we're going from, maybe 1,100 to the hundreds to, again, now we're at 224, roughly. But dwelling commencements in SA are down 10.3%. I wonder how many of these are just all in Adelaide. Honestly, how many are all in Adelaide? Unemployment is at 7.1%, and that's up 12.5% on the decade average. Where New South Wales is up 37%, Victoria is up 18%, ACT is down, of course, and Tasmania is up 17.9%. But let's have a look at the number of people, the percentage on, I should just keep it on this tab down here, the percentage of people on welfare in South Australia, and there we're looking at 11%, so not that good either, everyone. Population growth is 20% above. 20% above, so 1.02%. Well, my father's cousin, he actually came over to Australia first, because they're both from East Berlin. That back when there still was East Berlin, they managed to get over to the west, and they immigrated to Australia. They migrated here. He came to South Australia, went to Adelaide. Where do you think he worked, guys? Let us know in the comments if you think where a migrant off the boat from Germany would end up working in Adelaide in years gone past. I'll have a shot of coffee while you can write that in the comments, because, I think it'll be good to see. Of course it was Holden, everyone. Of course it was Holden. So, economic growth is up 13.5. Equipment investment is down 13.9. Housing finance, 36.5%. What we're seeing here is all the government incentives, the state intervention into the market. And there's money supplied through housing finance. What's it going to cause? It's going to cause a bubble in housing finance. Retail spending up 7% and construction work up 4.4%. You'll have to see, think about it. If it's okay for the government to throw so much money at housing finance now when the economy is tough, why don't they do it all the time? So South Australia is now in joint 4th position on the performance ranking. South Australia is 2nd ranked on relative population growth. Now, joint 6th is Queensland, my state. Dwelling commencement, 7,714, down 17.5%. Unemployment is at 7.7%, plus 26.3%. We're not doing that well, guys. Our unemployment rate is quite high. We have an election at the moment, and, I'll have to go through the differences between the parties, but I'm not really hopeful there are that many, sadly. So, our welfare percentage. What portion of our workforce is on welfare? And I said it before, 12%, everyone. Hey, at least we're not doing like the Northern Territory. Population growth is up 2.5% because we had all the Victorians, like myself, who migrated up to Queensland. Economic growth is up 16.3%. Equipment investment is down nearly 20%. Housing finance, again, up 40.4% on the decade average. Same thing, government stimulus. But still, we've got such a high unemployment rate. And dwelling commencements are lower than the decade average significantly. Retail spending is up 8.9%. Construction work is down 23.1%. Is this the first one with construction work actually down? Yes, it is. There you go. First one with construction work down. Not looking too good for Queensland, and we're a heavily tourism-dependent state. We're a coal-dependent state for natural resources. A lot of the coal mines in Australia are in Queensland and New South Wales for export. So, it's going to be an interesting few years ahead for us here in Queensland. Queensland is now in joint 6th position on the performance rankings. Queensland is ranked 2nd on retail trade. Well, okay, cool, I guess. Joint 6th place is Western Australia. Now, dwelling commencements, whoa, look at that. 46.7% down. Is that the worst we've had so far? Yes, it appears to be so. Definitely is. Oh boy. Unemployment is at 6.7%. Now, their percentage of workforce on welfare is at 10%. Population growth is down 3.5% on the decade average at 1.51%. Now, I wonder if people who are stuck in WA because they've got a rental crisis now, because of the border restrictions, people are camping there while they're working remotely. And I wonder if that will maybe turn into some people saying, you know what, let's just stay here while we're going back and forward from the East Coast. Economic growth is up 20.4%. Equipment investment up 6%. Housing finance is only up 7.8% in the decade average. Now that's, well, there you go. That's surprising considering what we've seen at the other states and the incredibly generous incentives that WA is throwing at housing. Right there. Has it already burned out, everyone? I mean, look at those dwelling commencements. Has it already burned out? And there's cases of people in negative equity in WA in different towns. I mean, they had a mining boom over there. WA is our iron ore capital of Australia. So much iron ore comes out of WA. So they're more susceptible to international demands for our iron ore resources than any other state in the country. Retail spending is up 4.5%. Construction work, look at that, down 43.0%. That's huge. Western Australia is now in joint 6th spot. WA ranks 2nd on relative economic growth and 3rd on equipment investment. And then, last spot in the country is the Northern Territory. Dwelling commencements, 143. That's it? Wow. 60% below the decade average. Unemployment is at 4.8%. Now, it's 11.8% above the decade average, but I think that's quite deceptive because the percentage of people on welfare are at 15%. Now, what we should also add with all of how, a figure we need, and let me know if we can find it somewhere. I'll have to have a look. The percentage of the workforce in each state that are employed by the government. That would be interesting to see. Because particularly in some of these remote communities, remote indigenous communities, you've got so many people just employed or so much money providing services. When you look at it per head of population, it just is insane. It is just crazy. And then you look at the outcomes that they get for all these interventions, and government's stepping in to make pricing affordable for the convenience store that they own. And you look like on some of these islands here in Queensland, it's all controlled. There's no free market. The government controls it all. And pork chops or lamb chops are like $40 a kilo, something crazy. Anyway. That would be interesting to see as well as another statistic. But, I mean, there you go. The greatest proportion of the workforce in any state in Australia on welfare is in the Northern Territory. Population growth is down 0.17%. So people are starting to flee the territory, guys. They want to get out of there. That's down 121.4%. What is going on in Northern Territory? What happened? Remember the old Never, never go. You'll never, never know if you never, never go. All those old tourism ads to get you to the territory. Economic growth is up 18.7%. Equipment investment is down 53.4%. Housing finance is down 9.5%. Retail spending is just up 0.5%. Construction work is down 67.6%. So you know what's happened. People were there for mining projects. People were there for other construction projects, and now they're getting out. The Northern Territory is second ranked on relative unemployment, but lags all the other states and territories on 6 of the 8 indicators. Well, there you go. I think the leadership in Northern Territory should be embarrassed with how their territory is going. So there we have it, everyone. The state of the states, according to the Economic Performance Report from Comsec. We have Tassie at number 1, although it's questionable, looking at the scale of these things. Let's see if we zoom in here, if we can. There we go. Tassie's number 1, relative population growth. Negative is relative unemployment, and I'd say also welfare. Then you've got number 2, the ACT, which is relative unemployment and relative population growth. And you have at third spot is Victoria, relative economic growth. Negative is equipment investment. Then fourth, you've got NSW, New South Wales, and South Australia. Construction growth and relative unemployment. South Australia's population growth and economic growth. And Queensland, we're doing it with retail trade and down on economic growth. WA is economic growth, I guess. Construction work. And NT, their relative unemployment. That's their plus. But we just saw how much of their workforce is on welfare. So, interesting to see that they do this and they're measuring these economic indicators, but I'd like to see a little bit more data there to really get an understanding of it. What do you think, everyone? Do you think Tasmania really is the best performing state? And what do you think the future is for our economy next year? We also need to look at the proportion of people on mortgage holiday in each state, the proportion of people on JobKeeper in each state. How much of the economy in these states are being propped up by the government? As always, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content I create here, there are a few ways you can. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us using our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or Kucoin. You can buy a merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.